I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
I can't just go running off into the blue. I am a Baggins of Bag End.
If Baggins loses, we eats at home.
Why did you come back?
I often think of Bag End. That's home. And that's why I came back, because you don't have one. It was taken from you. But I will help you take it back if I can.
You heard it up top. We are taking a very unexpected journey and talking another franchise in our franchise months-long exploration of Lord of the Rings. That's right, because now we're talking the prequels, The Hobbit, here on Normies Like Us with your hosts, Colin Gass the Brown.
All right, I'm going to go with what you threw me before the show. Mike the Defiler.
Gross.
Yeah, sorry.
Bilbo Baggins.
Nice.
Nice. And this is Jaco. That's what my dwarf name would be, I assume.
Jaco, son of Jill, or something like that.
Yeah, son of Jeloin.
That's right. So we're talking The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey, the first of the trilogy for Warner Brothers follow-up, like Colin said, / prequel. So, I mean, I guess real quick, like kind of what's your history with these movies? Did you see them in theaters? Jacob, let's start with you.
Well, I teased it last week, my story of my first time trying to watch this. And actually, I was just discussing it last night with someone who was there. So back when we were in college, I think, whenever this movie came out, 2012 or something, we went to see it in theaters. I went with some friends, including some friends of the podcast, like Cole and Andrew, who have been on this podcast before.
And famously...
Colin, I don't know if you were there.
Yeah, just for context, this was shot in 48 frames per second and had this whole 3D thing. It was supposed to be the future of cinema.
Right. So we were all, a couple of film students. We said, let's go see this in 3D, 48 frames per second. Let's see what this is all about. Cole, who, does, cinematography and stuff like that, was very skeptical about it. But we went, and we went with some other people. And we started watching it, and about 20 minutes into the movie, my friends were like, we can't, this is like making us sick, this is giving us headaches, like we want to bail. So they wanted to leave. I was into the movie, so I was like, I wanted to watch this movie. So they went and ate at Steak and Shake, and then they came, and then I was like, okay, maybe when you're done with that, I might want to leave, because I felt like I was inconveniencing them, like they would have to come pick me up later because I drove with them and everything. So I was like, so I just walked out after about 30 minutes, and I was like, well, I don't want to. And to that day, I never saw that movie fully, all the way through, because I'd only seen the first half hour in theaters, never gone back and rewatched it.
Wow.
So now I'm glad I finally have.
Wow.
But it
I was
was
going to say,
very
so
weird
you watched it
experience.
for this?
Job. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I had watched it before, but as I was watching, I was like, oh, I definitely have not seen most of this before, except for the beginning. But it was just a very unusual. I used to go to movies with those guys a lot, and they would always want to. They walked out of Scott Pilgrim too for some reason, but
For
maybe they
shame.
can come on and give their side of the story someday.
Yeah, maybe. Clear their name. Joe, how about you? What's your history with The Hobbit, Peter Jackson's Hobbit?
I watched it last night.
Nice.
That's
okay.
it. That's the end. No, I did not see these in theaters. I don't think it's any secret I was the most lukewarm on Lord of the Rings. I enjoyed those movies, but not enough to be on board for a sequel prequel trilogy. So no, this was my first experience.
Gotcha. Colin, how about you? Theaters, no theaters?
Yes, theaters. And 10 years later, Joe, we should say, a little more cynical than where we were when we were seeing Lord of the Rings. I think we kind of gushed about those films, about the cultural wrap-up, how excited everybody was. Yeah, Mike, for this, you're talking about the technology. Really, the write-ups were, oh, you should go see The Hobbit. It's got this weird gimmick. And I just, God, I remember getting dragged to this thing. And
Well, I thought you didn't come with us, Colin, that night?
No, I don't think so. I checked with my dad, and he said I saw the 48 with him.
You must have been out of town, but it was interesting.
I see.
I mean, I didn't love the 48 frames and the 3D. Like, it was an interesting experiment, but it just looked like, almost like when you have a TV with the motion smoothing on, and like my family does this. Like, I went to my sister's house, and she didn't even know what motion smoothing was. And I was like, I can't watch movies on this TV. Like, it's driving me crazy. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. It looks fine to me. But it just makes it look like a like a soap opera or something.
Yeah,
It's
everything looks like a
worth
soap opera.
explaining the sort of technique and the interest behind it. There were a couple people, Peter Jackson being the primary voice for this, going, cinema could be pure. Ong Lee and I, we have this idea. Yeah, the human eye observes things at 24 frames per second, but that's not true and pure. We could bump those numbers up and really get immersed. You could see action clearer. There's kind of a big case that like dialogue scenes would become like more dynamic and stuff, but I fall into the camp with Jacob where it just looks like somebody's hit fast forward a few times and it bugs me.
It's very strange, yeah.
Yeah, now on the home video or whatever releases, I don't think you can watch the 48 frames version. Even there's like a new 31 disc Lord of the Rings set that Chris was telling us about. You can't watch the 48 frame versions at all, so they're just dead and buried
Well,
like
this is
the
what I was
original
wondering.
Star Wars.
Did he even continue to do that with the second and third Hobbits?
We'll have
I
to
wasn't
get that
aware.
information and
Yeah.
find out next week when we jump into the desolation of it all. But for me, I love Lord of the Rings like we did. I said they're like my favorite movies more than Star Wars, but I didn't see this in theaters at all because of the gimmick and because of some of the stuff we'll get into production related, the rumors and this and that about it kind of having trouble and making it 3 movies, which I'll get into more. I'd never watched it. And then I finally watched it once on home video, never finished the trilogy. And then I watched a 4-hour fan edit of the trilogy, and that is my complete experience with this story. So there's a lot that I haven't seen. And unlike all of you, I am the sole masochist who watched the extended cuts of these and will be watching the extended cuts. I had to pay out of pocket for those, but yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to watch the extended, but they make it really hard because I thought these were on HBO. Only the second and third were on HBO Max, and only the normal version. Yeah. So Unexpected Journey, I rented it on Amazon, but to get the extended version, I had to buy it for $17, or you could buy the trilogy for $25. But I was like, I'm just gonna rent the normal version for $3.99 and just be done with it. But and the extended version of this movie is only 13 minutes longer. So is it really worth it?
They're not, and it clocks in at just 3 hours. So these are not when you think of extended edition, it doesn't really compete with the 4-hour, 25-minute Return of the King or anything. They're still fairly brief in comparison. Just shows how much they're stretching this to make an epic trilogy. But with that said, should we jump into it? Maybe talk a little history concerning hobbits to get a chapter title from Lord of the Rings in there, and then I will jump into the movie right after this. A hole in the ground lived a hobbit. Let's talk about them.
Back, we're talking the first one in the Hobbit series, An Unexpected Journey. And remember, listeners, your part took. One of your ancestors was even large enough to ride a full-size horse.
Mm-hmm. That's
We're
true.
so happy you're riding it and listening along.
And he invented golf. It was incredible.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So,
should we say here, history, we did in the big Fellowship episode, kind of knocked out our Lord of the Rings background.
Mm-hmm.
The prequel here, Tolkien, we talked about J.R.R. a bit in those past episodes. Go back and listen. Again, we have to mention this is the story before the story. Just kind of a tale, a bedtime story he created for his kids. A classic adventure story, just on the road, having fun. Not something you might split into 3 parts, but we'll talk about that. But do you guys have a history with the story itself, outside of also the we should say the Ralph Bakshi and the what are their names?
Rankin
stop-motion
Bass.
film.
The Rankin Bass animated,
yes.
yeah. I read the book as a kid. Like you said, it's a children's book he wrote for his kids, basically. It's just about, your average English kind of person who likes chilling, having to go on an adventure. It's kind of an allegory for going out your front door and having an adventure. A grand old adventure. It's very fun. It's a short book by comparison to Lord of the Rings, and we were calling these prequels, and this was not written as a prequel to Lord of the Rings intentionally. It was going to be a standalone thing, and then there's
Lord
some
of the Rings was written as
retconning.
a sequel
Yeah.
to this.
So the way the movies are positioning themselves as prequels is kind of not in the spirit of the original book. You know what I mean? So we'll deal with that as we go. But I love the story as a kid. I love that cartoon. It's got some of the great songs. South Park parodied it. And I'm looking forward to seeing how they do the rest of it, considering I've only seen maybe half of the footage that made it into the final cuts.
I also read the book as a kid. Unlike Lord of the Rings, we just had a copy of The Hobbit at home, and it's an easy read. It's like basically a children's book. I never saw the Rankin Bass. I actually looked up. I looked it up when you guys talked about it, and I was like, oh, I recognize the Hobbit, like how he looks in that. And I was like, okay, that looks
The
familiar,
round
but I don't
face.
remember it. Yeah.
Like
But the
a
book,
Cabbage Patch Kid.
yeah, the book, it's a good book. It's a good children's book. I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Joe, you ever read the book or see the Rankin Bass?
I had seen the cartoon. I think I mentioned in a previous episode, like I hated that cartoon because it was a staple of like, last day before break in Catholic school for me.
They
So
play
I
The
was
Hobbit.
Wow.
not there for it. No, I didn't read the book either. So I went in as clean could be, basically, with a
Okay.
half forgotten memory of a shitty cartoon. And
Well, the
It's a great
stakes are,
cartoon. I
right.
contend with that, but we're not
Yeah.
talking about the cartoon.
with the book, I think the stakes are a lot lower than, Lord of the Rings, and he didn't have the world as fleshed out as in Lord of the Rings. But,
Yeah, it's not as deep. So I guess now looking at the translation of this into films to do a little bit of the production, errata, get that out of the way. Originally, Lord of the Rings smash hit, won all the Oscars. Of course, we want to do that again. We have The Hobbit. And then Guillermo del Toro's attached to direct, and he wants to do 2 movies, which seems to make some sense, I guess, as opposed to 3. And long story short, there's some issues with production. It keeps getting delayed. Guillermo del Toro loses interest. So now in the 11th hour, they don't have a director. Peter Jackson doesn't want to direct. He is forced to. And then the studio demands to make it 3 movies. So they're kind of laying the tracks in front of the train as they're going. They're rewriting the script and shooting like stuff they're writing the day of.
Wow.
It was a
Right.
nightmare production.
So compared to Lord of the Rings, where they had, a planned trilogy that they're shooting all at once and they had this all planned out, now they're just like, we got to stretch this one children's book into 3 movies now. I don't know how that's going to work, but
Yes, and it results in them having to be like, all right, well, what's the ending for the first movie? We hadn't planned on having an arc end here, and they're, speeding things up, slowing things down, adding stuff, taking away. It's a huge mess, and I don't know if there's extended DVDs that document every step of the way. I imagine they filmed them because it was such a good job,
that'd
but
be good.
I would need to watch those just to see. This is what the alternate universe Lord of the Rings would have turned into. Like it could have gone badly, and it did go badly in my opinion, but we'll get into the movie proper. But any other production stuff that you guys know about with these or have heard about?
Yeah. I just even wanted to say you have to point out the audience for this stuff, because the audience for the book, our dads,
Yes.
playing Led Zeppelin. As we're in the car with the misty mountains
Mountain.
of the lonely halls, and
Yep.
it was nerds and stoners and losers. And when we say that book, the light, playful adventure novel, is getting translated into 3 movies, it is a book that is light on action and events, guys. So it really was an undertaking. I just wanted to underscore that.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, actually, I'm really interested to see the next 2 movies because I feel like this movie had about 75 to 85% of the plot of the book.
Yeah.
When Gollum showed up, I mean, Joe,
Yeah.
we had joked to you that you were going to see him again pretty soon. I didn't think it was going to be this one. Like, we blew our load pretty quick on the stuff I remember from The Hobbit in this movie.
Yeah.
Right. And so I guess to go on of that idea too, this is a children's book that was light on action and stuff and pretty quick, positioning itself as a forced prequel for Lord of the Rings. You're taking stuff from the Silmarillion and creating some new stuff, and you're just trying to, Warner Brothers kind of mandating, we need to make this feel like Lord of the Rings. When you read The Hobbit, it doesn't feel like Lord of the Rings, it feels like The Hobbit. And I think that's a
No.
big mistake, is trying to match it to the Lord of the Rings level of epicness, because they're
Well, I think
not adapting the book as purely as they did the Lord of the Rings, you know what I mean?
I think they did a decent job of trying to extend certain, like, add action scenes where there wasn't really in the book and extending certain things. But I do think it's geared toward these movies are geared towards a younger audience than Lord of the Rings was, even though they're in the same world. It definitely feels like a lighter tone and a more geared towards children.
Is that because this movie could technically be called a musical, Jacob, in that it has 3 songs? You wouldn't call it that if just the heroes were singing, but the bad guy troll also just does a little ditty that he just describes like, I just invented that. That's just a little song I made up.
He did have a lot of songs in the book because, he's a linguist. He would make songs for the kids because it's like you're reading a bedtime story and like, oh, the misty mountain cold.
And if you haven't actually read the book, you might be surprised by some of the stuff that are literally adapted from the books, like the whole dwarves in the beginning singing, doing the dishes and all that.
Crack the plates. That's what Bilbo Baggins. They literally sing that in the book.
Guys, I don't know. That's the moment where it goes south.
So let's get into it.
That my friends wanted to walk
right
out
at the fucking beginning.
The first scene is where it goes downhill. Yeah. So we got the unexpected journey where we're treated to a kind of a flash forward of Bilbo's life with Ian Holm talking to Bilbo. He's finishing his manuscripts. I never told you the whole story. And it's like, all right, we're tying into Lord of the Rings, but then it's essentially, the story of there and back again. His first adventure with Gandalf and the dwarves. And Gandalf shows up. It's time to fuck shit up.
First thing to even hit you off with, when we're in that flash forward, Mike, as a viewer, again, having not seen this, I saw this one time in the movie theaters and was like, I'm fucking done with this trilogy. To go after now having observed these films, I go, what is the sequence of events? Where would Bilbo be in his life where he is so wistful? He's talking about these events. We know he's on the boat by the end of the third one, so it can't be
well, this is right
after Fellowship of the
before.
Ring.
No, those scenes are taking place right before his birthday party.
You find out
like the
it's
day before
right.
his
It's I think the hour before
really
the
weird,
100th birthday, or whatever it is. That
And he's still
blew
writing his
my
book.
mind. Just the idea of like, hold on, guys. Let me tell you a quick story. It's like the most epic thing that ever happened to me, but we gotta do it before the cake gets here.
And I
Let's
think
talk about
totally-
Gandalf bringing the fireworks.
I totally forgot that Elijah Wood makes a cameo in this movie as well. When he
Crazy.
popped up, I was like, oh, that's cool, I guess.
Get that paycheck, brother.
Yeah.
Look, here's a not so unexpected reaction. I fucking hated this movie. I hated everything.
I fucking
about it.
hated this movie.
As expected.
It goes from like Snow White and the Seven Dwarves with like songs and washing dishes and shit to just a cameo fest. Like, here's the problem. Here's my thesis on this movie. This is not a movie. They didn't know the difference between filmmaking and content yet. What this should have been is a piece of content that played before a theme park attraction where you get some people back to do their cameo roles, and then you go through the Lord of the Rings ride.
Yeah, where an eagle picks you up.
Exactly. Like any one of the fucking Harry Potter roller coasters.
The barrel log slide,
The barrel would be.
I would argue you can make a Hobbit movie that works as one movie, not a trilogy with a bunch of added scenes. And like you're talking about with these cameos in the books, it's like, oh, Gandalf goes off to meet with his council or whatever. You don't see it in the books. In this, you see like Saruman, Galadriel, like all the big power players.
Well, Elrond's in the book. But yeah, there's a lot of fan
yeah.
service too. There's a lot of fan service happening because they're padding it out and doing that. I can agree with Joe. And yeah, I guess, let's just say what is good. And I think it's Martin, I can't remember his name now. What happened to me?
Freeman, Bilbo
Martin
himself.
Freeman. Bilbo is good. I like Martin
You said
Freeman.
Martin,
Bilbo.
I was like, who is Martin? I was like, the director?
the dwarf. The
Spoiler
dwarf
alert.
Martin. He's
I think
one
we
of
could
the...
all say Martin's
Fucking
good.
name.
Sorry, everybody.
Bilbo is the only name I know from a new character.
Oh, you don't know all the 14 dwarves' individual
Right.
names and
Just
personalities?
list them off,
Like
Joe.
Dopey and Sneezy and Sleepy and Stabby. No.
Who can say the most dwarf names? Jacob, how many do you got? Go for it.
Biffer, Boffer, Bomber, Feely,
One's
Keely,
really
Oin,
bugged me.
Gloin,
Bofford.
Thorin,
Bofford is not going to pass from
Colin,
Colin.
Dwalin.
Yeah.
Boffer.
Fucking stupid.
Isn't there a
Boffer.
Boffer?
Yeah, there is.
Bomber,
Olin. And you got to remember
Balin,
Thorin.
Dwalin. Yeah.
Yeah, Balin
Oin,
and
Gloin.
Dwalin are kind of your main two. The bald guy is Dwalin. Balin is the old white hair guy.
They have more of a personality than I
I
thought.
I
feel like I'm
I'm
having a
There's
stroke.
the fat one, the young one, the one that's Gimli.
the cute one.
It's kind of like Gimli.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's
my
Paul
whole
with the
thesis for
ball.
this movie.
To bang a bang.
It's Limp Bizkit is one of their names. My whole thesis, like Joe's, is that the issue is it's just the character translation. You're happy to be back in this universe. It's just you don't have characters you want to grab onto like Gimli and Legolas. But Jacob, you're saying you like these motherfuckers?
Well, okay, I'm probably sounding like I'm probably the most positive on this movie. I didn't hate it. Okay, I actually
Mike, did you like it?
I liked it better than I
Great.
expected to. But with the dwarves, here's the thing, right? They wanted to replicate the fellowship angle where they have this bond of this fellowship. But in the fellowship, you had all these distinct characters, right? And each one of them, you could be like, oh, that's Aragorn, that's fucking Boromir, blah, blah, blah. This one is like 14 different dwarves.
14 dwarves.
Yeah.
It's only 13, all right? God, it's not that many.
But like there's Thorin Oakenshield, right? Who's like the Aragorn of dwarves, I call him.
Yeah, he is, because he's the heir apparent.
You describe him as that, I know what character you're actually talking about. Yeah.
Right. So he's the Aragorn of dwarves, the king of the dwarves, or but they lost their home, obviously.
He has the right to be king, yes. He's yet to ascend, just like Aragorn.
But I feel like they actually did try to distinctify these different dwarves in small ways as much as possible. Because like in the book, there is this many dwarves, and they all have names. You can't really tell them apart. But I think in the movie, they maybe not for you guys, but for me, I thought they did a decent job of trying to make them distinct with their looks and their personalities.
There was the Merry and Pippin dwarves who like both get introduced at the same time and look exactly
Feely
like
and Keely.
One of those guys is going to have a love
cute
romance angle with an elf later, so get ready for that.
Human looking. Can I real quick fantasy question to our guru Mike before he answers whether or not he likes this?
I have a take on these dwarves, I tell you.
Mike, as a fantasy man, just to get this out of the way, are dwarves bigger than hobbits?
Yeah, they're slightly larger.
They're a little
than
bigger,
hobbits.
but they're both shorter than humans.
A little taller.
Yeah.
A hobbit is like a small child. A dwarf is like a medium-sized.
Well, it's
child,
a halfling.
Yeah.
So it's like a 2/3 ling.
So like a hobbit is about 3.5 feet tall. A dwarf can maybe max out at 4.5, 5 if they got good genes.
But I think that is a problem with the dwarves. Is some of them look like normal humans, and some of them look.
Well, let me address this.
Very strange.
This is important because in dwarf culture, according to Tolkien, you'd be laughed out of the building if you didn't have a sick ass beard. And then you have Keely, who's the cute one, who's going to get our love arc. It's like, what are you doing? No one has sick beards. Like you look at the dwarf lords from the prologue of Lord of the Rings, and then you got these idiots.
But if you compare it to Fellowship, they're like trying like. Feely or Keely,
he's like Legolas. He's got a bow and arrow.
Like the Legolas,
he's the cute one.
So like, we need a cute bow guy. We need a Aragorn type, and then the rest of them are kind of just undistinct dwarves.
Well, this entire movie, and as we go forward, you'll see the parallels, and I'll point them out. Is basically a shittier version of Fellowship. You get the group together in the Shire. You leave the Shire. You go to Rivendell. You fucking get to a mountain. It's the same thing, but for the dwarves.
Stakes.
Yeah. I want to say the fucking dwarves. Mm-hmm. I hate the tone. It feels like there is no reverence for this culture. Like the dwarves are represented as a bunch of fucking idiots that you would want to have nothing to do with. They're rude, they're shitty, and then they'll take one moment to sing a somber song and then go back to being fucking morons. I hate spending time with these characters except for Thorin.
They love eating food.
Maniacs, like they come through like a storm, and almost every supporting character who's an adult and tall is like, I don't want to deal with these idiots, like get them out of here.
They hate it. This is the goofiest fucking movie I've seen in a long time, and I don't mean that like a goofy movie where it's good.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just like the tone was awful to me.
It's geared towards children, and I think it is adapted from the books. I think it was supposed to be. But I mean,
because there's a heading in the first 2 minutes.
That's the thing is they have to reconcile the violence of Middle Earth in Lord of the Rings with the more childlike tone of this. But in the book, they show up at Bilbo's house like that and like eat all his food.
Yeah,
and
they
shit.
do
Like,
that.
That's from the
The
books.
Cat in the Hat. Like,
Yeah.
just there to like.
I want to
fuck shit
explain
up.
to my kid what Azarath the Defiler means.
And
I'm not
That
ready
was
to have that
added.
conversation.
That's not in the book, I don't think. Like
He's
that,
from the
There's no
Silmarillion. He was like
Defiler?
dead
Oh, okay.
1,000 years ago or something.
but they needed another villain to like give it some
we got the
action
Witch
and some
King.
stakes.
Yeah.
Well, this
Yeah.
is just like with that lead Uruk-hai being the main antagonist of the Fellowship. We needed to just do that again. So we're going to do it
Right.
with Azog the Defiler for Thorin. It's literally just remaking Fellowship.
King.
Yeah, which we can get into how he looks, CG and all
Yeah,
that.
but you can't. They couldn't reconcile the children's book that they're basing it off of with the tone
Yeah.
of Lord of the Rings, and you can't
Right.
have it both ways. They could have made a kids Hobbit movie, but they had no
Yes.
interest in doing that, and that's why it's tonally so fucking crazy and
I totally
inconsistent.
agree
Just so
with you.
goofy. It's all
And-
over the place.
Mhm.
Yeah, and Mike, like you said, it's a shittier Fellowship. Look at the stakes of Fellowship compared to this. So, Frodo, there's this ring, we have to destroy it. All good versus evil, all that shit. In The Hobbit, it's like, oh, Gandalf thinks Bilbo is like boring and he needs an adventure.
Mhm.
So he's just like, all right, you're gonna join up with these guys. You're gonna go on an adventure because you need some like spice in your life, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
And like that's the
I think, like,
stakes. Yeah.
I think in a children's book that works.
It's
Like
funny.
having a
Yeah.
character show up and be like, "Hey, you need to get out of your shell. I'm teaching you a moral because this is a children's story."
Mhm.
In a movie, it's just like, "Wow, I fucking hate Gandalf now. Like you ruined Gandalf for me because he
Damn.
like I yeah."
Yeah,
I guess I don't
Gandalf's
want to be
dangerous
too
business,
negative, but you got to
walking
think
out your
you
front
guys
door.
had like some sort of experience with this before, right? Like you knew, like Jacob, you had at least seen the first 30 minutes, so you knew.
Well, and I
that
knew
you
the
were gonna
plot
have,
of the
like,
books.
goofy moments. Like,
Well, I knew you were gonna
kinda
hate
what
this
the tone
movie
would be.
based on the first 20 minutes.
Keep in
Yeah.
mind, Joe,
Yeah.
all of our first viewings of this gave all of us headaches. This film has a very hard battle it's fighting right now.
Well, here's what
Yeah.
I would argue. It actually gets better. Like the beginning of the movie is the worst part, and once you actually get on the adventure, it does pick up the pace a little bit, and I think it gets a little better.
I think if I'm gonna keep on this Fellowship versus the Unexpected Journey thing, it's like even just opening in the Shire, it's like it doesn't feel cozy the way the opening of Fellowship does. Like they're literally trying to do the exact same thing. It just doesn't
Yeah.
land. And it does pick up, when they get to the adventure, but they have a bad habit of overstaying their welcome in every single scene of
Well, yeah,
the
that's
movie.
like because they had to pad everything out. So like the troll meeting scene, which was a story in.
I want to hear Joe's
So
takes on some of this
fucking
stuff.
over it.
Yeah. What about the cooking trolls? Do you like that?
It was cute for like 5 minutes. By the time I'm in the 30-minute mark of that scene, I'm like, holy fucking shit! Are these the bad guys? Is this movie about trolls showing up? Like, you talk about the stakes. I don't know what the stakes were there of this movie.
Right.
I don't know what was happening.
The overarching goal is the dwarves are trying to get their home back, which has been, captured by the dragon Smaug. Dragons love gold, and they had a lot of it. He went in there, burned Lake Town, and they want to get their home back. But minute to minute, it's just
Okay. But
travel.
how about things like the Ark Stone, Mike? Like that on this viewing was blowing my mind. I was like, oh wow, they have to have an item to anchor this franchise on, like the ring. But in the story, that's them getting their home. It's not some magical thing that I don't know anything about. Is that from the Silmarillion or is that from the Hobbit?
I think the Arkenstone is in the Hobbit. It's like the king's jewel. It's just how they prove that it's divine right. Like, oh, we have the rock. It belongs to the king. So the A plot is we need to get the home back. The B is like Frodo going on an adventure. And the C is Thorin wrestling with, oh, my grandfather went crazy. My dad went crazy. What if I go crazy? That's kind of the main arcs.
I'm Sad King now.
He's Sad
Yeah.
King, yeah.
Which
So
Richard
like, again, a
Armitage.
lot of that just seems like you've been saying, a hard rehash of Fellowship. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
and the decision, like, to extend everything, like, let's go back to the cooking scene, is just, it ruins any bit of good. Like, I appreciate Sad King in doses. I appreciate Bilbo thinking of home in doses. But when everything's stretched, even with the trolls, they have a big-ass battle and then get captured anyway. There's no battle in the book. They just argue
Right.
about how
That's
they're
what I
going to
was-
cook them and the sun comes up. It's not a
Yeah,
big
that's
deal.
what I wanted to say about the troll story. It's like, is better in Lord of the Rings when he's just telling the story of it, and then you see there's the scene where you see the stone trolls in Fellowship. In this, it's like, yeah, the whole thing gets dragged out because they had to add more action into it.
And the number of
long,
times
man.
that they die. If one of those trolls picked them up, crush, your head's dead. When they fall off mountains, you're dead. The storm giant fighting, they're dead. The amount of bullshit they survive compared to Fellowship, it's just egregious and gross, and I hate it.
Well, and there's no stakes because if you've read the book, if you're familiar with the story, you know none of those dwarves are going to die in that scene, right?
Yeah.
I also don't give a shit about all 14 of those dwarves. Like, I just don't. Like, there's no.
If you told me
relationship.
they were so bland because at the end of this movie, 8 out of 14 would die, I would have expected that and understood it from narrative storytelling with how little I liked
they're all
or
fine.
understood these dwarves. But yeah, at the end, I'm like, oh, great, we're all still here. Adventure
Oh,
continue.
it's all back together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like, you know how like the Muppets have like, Electric Mayhem? They're like all the characters who are not fucking Animal or Jelly. Like,
No.
they're just
It's
the people
Muppets
there.
you can't name, Joe. You're exactly right. That is the cast of this movie.
Yeah.
But
I
then
gotta say,
every
as
once in a
much
while,
as
Kermit shows up for 30 seconds.
Yeah, and
they're
you're like, I
"Sweet,
love
yeah,
Kermit."
I recognize him.
look."
but even though I am
Gonzo got his rubber chicken, here it is in the background of a scene.
as much as I am shit talking the doors, I actually like them.
Amazing.
Why?
Yeah.
They go to Rivendell and they just
I
are
thought
like,
they were funny.
fuck food here. I want to dance on the
Fuck
table. They're
the
so
elves.
disrespectful, dude.
I know
They're
that
terrible.
that wasn't a great scene because they're like smashing furniture and like burning it and stuff. I'm like, why? I don't know why they're doing
Mike,
that.
show your map to this old man. He's maybe one of the only people who can read it. Nah,
Fuck him.
you.
It's
But-
like,
What do you know? Oh man,
Yeah, but that
I'm a
fits
young
with the
boy.
Lord of the Rings, where Gimli and Legolas hated each other at first,
Yeah.
right? 'Cause
Oh,
the
and
dwarves
here's-
elves
here's a-
historically.
yep. And there's an extended thing here. So in the prologue where they talk about the fall of Erebor, they cut like a 30-second sequence that shows the dwarves with a chest of mithril, and then the Elf King like coming over to it, and then they close it on him, and they're like, "Fuck you!" And they're like, "Oh, that's what started the rift." The elves say one story, the dwarves say another story, and there's conflicting on what really happened. But to cut that out, that explains like why they hate each other, makes no sense.
Weird.
Yeah,
And again,
Especially
the
for how long the
dwarves.
movie is.
it's only 30 seconds. Yeah, just leave it in.
I think the doors are interesting though, because like I said, they're based on the Jewish people of Europe who were displaced from their home, right? And
Right.
that's what
Yes.
happens. And it's kind of a historical allegory in a way, but
We'll need to leave the fondness of gold at the door with that.
Yes,
you know,
but
that,
yeah,
there's some
some
baggage.
things with Tolkien,
We
but
are
yeah.
using our trinkets, whatever we have left.
Mhm.
Thorin's been working in a pub for like 60 years or something, it sounds like, to get enough money to hire this guy who can get us across enemy lines and get us back our birthright. Like Mike said,
Yeah.
this endless supply of treasure. and
Right.
money.
And there's something.
which I think is a compelling. It's
Yeah.
compelling
Great
story.
narrative.
Yeah.
No, because that's what I like. That's what works. But it's just there's too much around it. But you have a hobbit who wants to stay home. He gives that speech at the end. Yeah, I do think of home, and that's why I came back, because you don't have one, and I'll help you take it back if I can. That's probably my favorite moment, is that speech. That's the most Lord of the
like-
Rings feeling thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the Thorin Bilbo relationship, where at first Thorin doesn't understand, like, why are you even here? Like, what do you add to the party? But he's got a big heart. He's a small guy with a big heart, right?
Yeah.
And he's the one.
Yeah.
But it's
I
a children.
guess.
It's a children's story. If you look at it from that point of view,
It's not a children's movie, so it doesn't get a pass.
I think it is a children's movie.
No, it's not. Not with Azog the Defiler.
It can't be.
But there's
It's
some
not
stuff
a
in there,
children's
like
movie.
Radagast the Brown riding on his sled of rabbits and shit.
Of rabbits, you're so right. Well, I want to stay with this real
I
quick.
forgot about
Well,
that.
we'll get there. Oh
That's
God.
disgusting. We'll get through the plot too, but just while we're still on the dwarves involved and saying it's for children, do you think children like how these characters look? I'll be honest with you. This is a film that was nominated for Makeup Award. I don't like looking at half of these characters. I like the one that looks like Gimli. He acts normal in my mind.
That's Gloin, father of Gimli.
Yeah.
Great. He's
Gimli's kinda
great.
glowing.
The one with the like Friar Tuck hair, who's
There's
also
some
a
weird
doofus with
haircuts,
a
yeah.
mustache, and the one who's got to put the horn in his ear. Get him out. Get all of these characters out. I don't
Well,
want
again,
to
there's-
look
You're
at
you
still
them.
compare
just having
the-
dwarves, man.
the more realistic looking dwarves of Lord of the Rings, and now you have all these ridiculous looking, like the big fat one that's like
Bomber.
ridiculously fat. Yeah, it's like some of
Bomber
them just don't look
it's
human. I mean, they're not human.
absurd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not, but just the idea that this is the guy who made the trilogy of like, and I don't even mean just the makeup versus CGI, because we're gonna get into the Defiler and what ended up happening with that character, I'm sure. But just the idea that this is the guy who was like, oh, you know, practical, everything's got to look real, the makeup effects, you know, just the layers and things that we can do. Well, how should our lead of dwarves that are going to be the linchpin and stars of your new franchise, what should they look like? Rejected Roger Rabbit cartoons. Yeah, like just a mix, just whatever you want.
Yeah.
I think some of them look good. Like Thorin looks fine. The Balin and Dwalin fine. But like you said, some of them are just ridiculous.
I don't know which ones you're naming.
Balin's
Balin
the
and
bald
Dwalin,
guy with
dog.
tattoos on his
Bald
head.
one and
I
there's
know
the
Dwalin.
gray-haired old guy. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
the
think that's
older
Graham
dwarf.
McTavish, and he is maybe my favorite.
Graham McTavish is
Yeah.
Dwalin, yeah. But
Okay,
the
I
names
do
don't
like
matter.
Better
Yeah,
than me.
it's like we're just going to take the character creator, max the sliders out at random, and there you go.
Yeah, and ears on this one, Mike, and white hair, and that's one. Okay, this one nose. And
Maximize
it almost
mustache.
feels racist.
No, if you
Yeah,
look
I
at
don't know.
Gimli in Lord of the Rings, they're just supposed to be short
Yes.
guys with like beards and hair and shit. Like
and
they're
maybe
not.
redheads. Yeah, it seemed
Yeah.
like. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're
Not
not
these
very
freaks.
distinct. But they tried to, even in the book, it's like probably hard to tell them apart. You can't do so much with 14 characters. So it's like,
Yeah.
we'll just make
Well,
them look
what was
crazy.
their options? Like cut out some of the dwarves and then just have it not be accurate
And
to
you
the
know
book?
what? And from what
It's
I
a
remember
challenge.
from the Rankin Bass too, Mike, is it not true that all the dwarves are represented as exactly the same animation, except Thorin isn't wearing a helmet and he's like the one that talks to Gandalf?
There's like pairs, so it's like Feely and Keely, Owen-Sir and Glowen-Sir. Like, so there's like visual
I'd like to
duos,
see them.
and it kind of simplifies it because then you just have to think
Yeah.
of sets of 2 and then Thorin as opposed to 13
that would be better
individuals.
for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's a couple
I still
triplets,
say
you know.
they did a decent job of trying
You
to.
can't defend it. You keep saying that, but then agreeing with us. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a hard task to even try to make these. Like making these into 3 movies was a mistake from the first place. Like you said, that
Yes.
was studio saying they wanted 3 movies.
Yeah.
I think I think they could have made a good Hobbit movie. That's one movie, 2.5 hours long or whatever. Fine. Trying to stretch this material out is just not going to work. Wasn't ever going to work, right?
Yeah, and another production note is, Peter Jackson is essentially making these with a gun to his head with no time to do pre-production because Warner Brothers saying, if you don't direct it, we'll just find some asshole journeyman to do it. So Peter
Right.
Jackson loves Middle-earth so much, he doesn't want that to happen. So he's basically killing himself to make these. There's a ton
Yeah.
more green screen and CGI in these than Lord of the Rings because they didn't have time. And
that's the
it
other thing is-
suffers because of it.
I would have loved to see the Guillermo del Toro version.
Weird.
You know, he would have brought his own spin to it rather than just getting Peter Jackson just making these because someone has to, you know?
It would have just been a Hobbit movie, not this studio tie-in. I think that's why he left. He didn't want to do that,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this was a cash grab, and it felt like one.
Yes.
Like, there's no way around it. It felt like a cheap cash grab where they didn't care tonally how it was all over the place. It didn't matter. Because you're going to get morons to come to the theater and be like, oh, see, it's Frodo, Elijah Wood. I remember a decade ago I was interested in this.
Joe, you're 100% dead on. That's the best way to look at these as an audience is Lord of the Rings 100% was a labor of love from everybody involved. This is a cash grab, and it's made in desperation. And
But at
it
the same
feels
time,
like
I can't totally hate it because I think they could have been worse. And I think they did try to, like Peter Jackson tried to make these movies good.
and there's elements that are
An
good
attempt
in
was
them.
made.
Yeah, and
I
it's-
think I would love that cut Mike watched where it's just 4 hours. Jacob, did this one leave you excited to see the rest, like the other Lord of the Rings?
Well, it's like
Ditto.
knowing there's 2 more. I'm just like, and I know the next one is called The Desolation of Smog. It's gonna be
But
mostly
you also
about
know
smog.
that it's like the one where they're like, we had to make 3. We
Right.
just can't finish the
Well,
story. This is just gonna be the one.
third
where we
one, the
drag
Battle
our
of 5
feet.
Armies. Who are the 5 armies? What are they fighting over? I assume the next one's going to be all about the dragon, and then the third one's
Right.
all going to be about like the battle for Erebor or something. I'm
Because
not
there's a
really
shitload
sure.
of treasure in there, so groups
Yeah.
Right.
want it. That's what they fight over after the
So
dragon's
they're going to
gone.
defeat the dragon
Treasure
in the next one, I'm guessing, and then you're going to have the Witch King of whatever and all that stuff. So who knows? But
Whose story is this?
It is.
question.
it's Bilbo,
Can
supposedly,
someone
right?
Is it?
Well, it's Bilbo. It's like Bilbo is the Frodo, Thorin is the Aragorn. So you could say who, Lord of the Rings was Aragorn as much as Frodo, right? So Thorin has the Aragorn
That was my
part.
complaint of
It's a good way to
Return of the
look at it.
King. I'm
Yeah.
with Joe on this. This one, it just, I think these whole movies are going to end up disconnecting from the point of it, especially once we start splitting up and more elves get involved. I'm very nervous.
Oh man.
Evangeline
Very
Lilly.
nervous.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I am. Yeah, excited is not the right word, but I'm not like bummed out to keep watching them because at least now I know. You know what I mean? Like
Morbid
I didn't know what
curiosity.
to expect,
Yeah.
and then what I got was like trash. So it's like, okay, well at least I know that these are
Yeah.
going to be like goofy Disney movies inside of a brutal fantasy universe.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm expecting to like this one the most because it has most of the plot of The Hobbit in it.
Right.
The other two, I'm not sure what they're going to be about, so I'm excited to find out. But again, I feel like other than like the barrel racing or whatever in the book, like most of the book has been covered. Like they did Goblin Town, they went to Rivendell, all that shit. So I don't know where they go from here.
Well, I don't want
The
to
desolation of
spoil.
Smog.
Yeah, it's true. Which is the name of a location, by the way. Before I continue, it's a very cool name of a space. It's the space that he decimated. That is the desolation of Smaug, is an area of uninhabitable Earth. Anyway,
Oh, I didn't
it's
realize.
like Chernobyl. It's very cool. But
Yeah, that's crazy.
so get ready for that next week. At least it's a cool proper noun. But for this unexpected journey, I do want to talk about one scene that is a standout. And when I'm looking at these movies, I feel like there's only two scenes that Peter Jackson actually really wanted to direct. And one of them is Riddles in the Dark, where we find the ring and we get Gollum. Joe, you get Gollum back. What do you think of Riddles in the Dark? Very true to the book. The riddles are right out of there, read the same way. It's a good scene in my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it works for me. It definitely does. But my problem is like, look, I'm not a kid who grew up on The Hobbit. And like, I just watched all three of these movies. I enjoyed them. Now we are like a decade later. I don't know. It just feels so cheap to me. It just feels like I'm waiting in line to go on the Desolation of Smog coaster. And this is a scene that's playing on the TV while I wait in line where they're like, look, we got, Andy Serkis. He's back. He's doing a little scene as Gollum. Watch it. Like, they literally did that with the Harry Potter kids. They came back for the fucking bank roller
Oh,
coaster.
yeah.
So I think that was a good scene. But again, like, if I was watching an
I'm Elijah
animatronic
Woods,
Golem say
You're
it,
about
like,
to
in
get
a
on
waiting
the
queue,
Hobbit ride.
Yeah.
that's how
I,
it felt like. That's what this should have been to me. It's like a fucking,
I mean, it's
interactive
based on a book.
experience
It is
on
a corporate
cruise
product,
ship.
though, more than it is a movie, Joe. You're right. It feels like a ride, yeah.
I would say I thought that scene, the Gollum scene, was great. I
do
have
like
to
that
say
scene.
I'm Team Gollum because, and this is a take I've had since the book, but what have I got in my pocket? Not a riddle.
Bullshit.
That's not a riddle.
Bullshit.
That's against
One
the
of those
rules.
things.
Yeah.
The way that they're going back and forth, because when he does the teeth one, Jacob, I'm like, oh, Smeagol's kind of got a brain still going on up there. This
Yeah.
is pretty good. And then
loves riddles.
Bilbo pulls out some like third grader bullshit of
Yeah, what's in my
my
pocket?"
pocket.
Oh, the ring you stole from me, you fucking jackass.
Yeah, let me guess. Something that's mine?
Yeah, Gollum was totally in the right. I mean, Bilbo stole his ring and then bullshitted him and then escaped with it. So
He did just steal that straight up. And when you see the look on his face, though, when he puts it
Right.
together, like, what's in its pockets? Like, he's looking in the water. It's
Precious.
so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
I love that scene. And
well, you
Bilbo
say like you
considers
said, it's a
cut his
cameo
throat.
fest, but I thought the cameos were some of the funnest parts because I was like, oh, that's someone I recognize from Lord of the Rings. Oh, that's someone
Well,
I recognize.
That's just falling for the product, Jacob.
But that's
Say-
what
say
Star
the
Wars.
line,
That's all
Bart.
Star Wars is now, right? So like, how is Star Wars different?
it's,
Oh, that's Luke
It's
Skywalker. I
not.
recognize him.
it's worse
Yeah,
because of
no.
it.
Those are the least favorite of my Star Wars movies. So.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Well,
like in the
so-
Mandalorian and
We should say it's been 10 years. There's more than 3 computers working on this film now. What did you guys think of Smeagol's actual look? I thought maybe kind of to the kid point you're making, Jacob. Does he look cuter than he does in the Lord of the Rings films?
Maybe. I mean, this is 60 years before Lord of the Rings, so he's less like demented at this point, maybe.
Yeah, I guess so.
He's still got his face hasn't
little bit.
totally dried out yet.
He's singing his fish song that he loves to sing.
The reprisal. Yeah, I love that song.
So good.
I think it holds up. I think it's the best looking effect in the movie because
I agree.
Goblin King looks
Some of
really
the other,
bad.
yeah, Goblin King looks bad. Azog, what's his name? Azog the Defiler.
Bad.
Not great. And I think the worst part of him is that the other like orcs and stuff are practical and they look like the orcs from Lord of the Rings, and then you have this like general orc who's clearly CG playing against
General
them.
Grievous just walks out, Jacob, like a smooth white robot is like, and did you get them? I'm like, who is this guy?
Yeah, and so that doesn't work at all. Like the wargs have always been like CG, but they didn't look great in Lord of the Rings either. But
they do look better in Lord of the Rings. They had practical ones that like John Rhys Davies would lie under. They built a couple of the maws for close-ups and stuff, like Jurassic Park style. So yeah, I think the CG just also, because they rely on it so much, like because of time, it makes this feel cheaper, and less genuine.
Oh yeah, it looks awful. Mm-hmm. Like even the other wizard, the goofy wizard,
Radagast,
Goofball,
looked
Radagast
awful.
Brown.
Like him, riding his sled through the forest, just looked like trash. It looked like really bad.
Well, that's like
it's like the Indiana Jones trucks race from Crystal Skull.
Yeah.
Sure.
That looks like that's meant for like 12-year-olds to be like, oh, shiny things.
Give 12-year-olds more credit, dude. For like 5-year-olds.
You know what? I couldn't stop thinking about how in the last episode you were like, well, Gandalf's an angel.
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And then watching this, I was like, this is the other angel?
Yes.
Like that
They're
guy
more like
fucking
demigods.
sucks.
They're kind of like angels or demigods.
Let's lay it out too. The Hobbit asks, Bilbo says, are there other wizards? Meaning, are there other angels? And Gandalf's response is, there's Saruman the White, he's our leader. There's 2 the Blue, I don't remember their names. And there's me and Radagast.
The Blue Wizards is a reference to because Tolkien never named them, I think. So that's kind of a reference to that. They're just the other blue wizards that are away. And then there's Radagast the Brown. I didn't love his look in this movie, and it's maybe kind of accurate to how he's described, but they could have made him like a little less like goofy looking. I think
he doesn't even make an appearance in the book. Gandalf just says, and then there's Radagast, who's my cousin.
I like the idea of him.
He doesn't show up.
Like, he's the forest guy. He loves animals. He's the forest.
He's got
hermit.
bird shit on his head. I love it.
But let's say
I love it. I love him. He's so goofy.
There's a detective subplot that a man being pulled by a chariot of rabbits discovers a knife that ghosts can use, and this freaks out all the elves in this world. This is the stuff, again, I'm positive none of this is in The Hobbit. And
no, this is all like
ludicrous.
Silmarillion type stuff.
Well, it's all, I'll tell you what it is.
It's
this like, but we gotta have in the background that, Sauron could be lurking. There's gotta be a reason that like Gandalf doesn't know what's going on 60 years from now. It's like, I don't give a shit about that. You don't have to answer that question.
I actually like that.
I mean, I don't.
Jacob, do you like when Han Solo gets his dice? Because that's what that is.
Yes.
No, because it's showing that the world is getting darker. Like Sauron is growing to power. Like it's to me, it's more like Star Wars prequel stuff, like Senator Palpatine, before he becomes the Emperor or whatever. And I like the idea of Radagast being the forest hermit guy. Didn't love his look. I do like the idea of him riding on a sled pulled by rabbits. I think that's kind of funny.
Me too.
I mean, oh god, you got riding on an elk, man on an elk, fucking rabbit sled. Let's get more animal shit going on. But
well, here's the thing: Radagast is like what if they adapted Tom Bombadil in Lord of the Rings and like put him in there literally how he is in the books. Like it would have been ridiculous. So Peter Jackson was smart enough to be like, that's not going to work with the plot with the pacing and everything of the movie. So they didn't do it. And a lot of like hardcore fans still complain like, oh, what Tom Bombadil, man? He's he's in the books.
Yeah.
Who the fuck is Tom Bombadil?
You don't know.
Ba-ba-ba-ba.
That's
Don't
Lord of the
worry
Rings.
about
But
Who's Tommy Bahama?
Tommy Bahama, Tommy.
He's
I
like
forget.
the Doctor Who of the
Tommy
Lord
Doyle?
of the Rings universe.
Oh,
like,
okay,
what?
pass.
He's like
We
this
don't need to
character that
explain
shows
it.
up for one chapter that has nothing to do with the overarching plot in the book. And some hardcore fans are like, oh, they didn't literally adapt every single thing from the book, so it's not good or whatever. But no, it would have ruined the pacing of the movie.
Yeah.
Radagast, I appreciate that they tried to do something with him, but
I get his
didn't really work.
function as like this is a woodsman wizard, but he does have to discover the necromancer and then tell the other wizards because this is a prequel to Lord of the Rings, not just The Hobbit, and I don't like it, and that's why you get Saruman and Galadriel, which I like seeing her and stuff, and Saruman's like, I don't like Radagast because he does mushrooms, and then he's talking.
He's still always getting high.
Yeah, and he talks shit about Gandalf smoking
cool,
weed.
man.
He's Saruman's
Yeah.
straight edge, dude. He's not about it.
Yeah,
the best
fucking
scene, the
straight
best
edge
Radagast
angel.
scene. Is
But
when
he was
he's all-
stashing
he's
Longbottom
freaking out.
Leaf.
Yeah,
So
the
goofy.
hypocrite.
It's so
The scene where
goofy.
Radagast is like freaking out, Gandalf's like, "Calm down, take a hit of this shit."
Old
take
Toby.
it easy. He's
Take
like,
a hit of the old Toby,
"Oh."
man.
Remember,
Look, my eyes.
smoke
crossed.
my
Isn't this
weed and you
funny?
will.
Yeah.
I love that scene.
Chill,
Yeah,
fam.
great.
I gotta get some old
Yeah.
Toby.
Yeah, and again, it's been 10 years for Ian McKellen as well. Someone we pointed out, the first film nominated for Best Supporting Actor for that performance.
Mhm.
And this one, I'll be honest with you guys, I Googled whether or not he had died from COVID because I was unsure. And
Oh,
in
no.
this one, I was like, he just looks sad and bad in these movies. I don't
He did
know.
look a lot older, but I mean, he's an older guy now. But
Yeah. And he's still alive, thank God.
I think
yes.
it's fine because he's like reborn in Lord of the Rings. But here's my
Yeah.
problem:
Oh, true.
you're not taking a character like you do in the Star Wars prequels with Anakin and showing like, here's who he was before the fall. You know what I mean? Like you're not learning anything new that explains why he is the way he is. It's just, oh, let's take a character and you're going to see him without any of the character development we gave him in the previous story, and we're not going to give him any in this one either. So, here's some,
But he's not-
some
yeah.
half-assed
He's
weed
more of a
jokes.
supporting character, and in the books, he kind of comes and goes from the group, and he's doing other stuff that's kind of not seen, meeting with important figures and all that. So you kind of see some of that in that book, in the movie. So I kind of like that angle of it.
Yeah, I mean, they that's where they kind of added the runtime. Was like, okay, so when Gandalf goes away in the book and just shows up later for Deus Ex Machina, let's just show all of that shit. And the fan
Yeah.
edit that I watched, they had The Hobbit cut into 4 hours, then an hour and a half movie that was just Gandalf and the Dol Guldur learning about the Necromancer, dealing only with the fan service characters, and it's like
Okay.
content. That's
Oh,
another
yeah.
thing.
That was
Doesn't
pulled out
what
of
this
the
is,
other one
yeah.
otherwise?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
That is interesting.
because
yeah.
the Necromancer is Sauron, right? But that idea is never brought up. Like, we don't know he's Sauron in the
Interesting.
Hobbit book.
Sure.
It's just like, oh, there's a guy doing stuff. So
Right. Well, you don't know who they don't really even know who Elrond is in the Hobbit book. He's just like an elf king. Or
he does
whatever,
read the map to them. But so adding that Dol Guldur and that Sauron's lurking and whoa, why are the goblins coming down from the mountains? Like, that ruins any of the good stuff in this movie, basically. is
Well, I
the
think it's like,
problem.
what are you expecting out of it? Because, like you said, they try to have it both ways. They tried to make it a prequel to Lord of the Rings and its own standalone movie, being The Hobbit. But what would you rather have?
Guillermo del Toro's two
Not
Hobbit
a
movies.
children's movie, not a
Yeah.
children's book. That's not a children's movie because
Yeah.
it's not a children's movie. It's
I
just
think it
not,
is.
like-
I think it is.
I would say to Joe's point too about the
Disagree.
stuff
I'm with Joe.
the prequel Star Wars stuff. It's an interesting position to be in because despite the fact that The Hobbit came first and it does have implications and an impact on the Lord of the Rings story, this film feels far closer to a Solo the Star Wars story than a Phantom Menace in my opinion.
You literally see Aragorn's sword and here are all these characters that you knew before. It's yeah, it does.
But-
Which is I like Solo, so I'm not saying that's a bad thing about
No,
it. But
no,
anyone
no.
who's talked shit about Solo, like, if you like anything in this, I don't want to hear it because it's the same thing.
Well, but at the same time, like, it is adapted from material. It's not like they're just making it up, right? So
Right.
they could only do so, like, they can't change the story of the Hobbit too much,
Yeah, but what?
I don't care that it's adapted. Like,
But
I
I
don't.
mean, other people do.
Better.
Yeah, but the thing
Yeah.
is they're adapting two different books that have served two completely different functions, and they're putting them together. Silmarillion is more encyclopedic, almost historical, right? Telling these are the events that happened on this day, and then you have a literal children's book. They're trying to do both, and you have a guy named Azog the Defiler. It's not a children's movie.
I think it mostly is. That it just has darker elements, but then you have really childish scenes like the Goblin Town and stuff. It's like, who else would this be for but children?
But it's also so gross.
For nerds.
Like the goblins,
It's
it's not fun scary. It's like, it's just,
Yes.
it's gross looking down there. It's,
Yeah.
and
it's not a kids movie. Like the most brutal thing in any Lord of the Rings movie is in the opening of this, where Dwarf Aragorn's like, and then they beheaded my dad in front of me and threw it at my feet. Like, it's not.
That's true.
You
But at
try
the
to
same
take
time,
that-
Gandalf
try to show a
decapitates
child
an orc.
that, It ain't gonna work.
But I also think the most of the action is like very bloodless and very like no one really gets hurt, and it's not very violent looking, aside from some of the beheadings, I guess. But like compared to Lord of the Rings, it's much less like brutal and violent to me.
I mean, but the
So
Goblin
it feels
King,
more child oriented.
right? The Goblin King says, "What are you going to do, Gandalf?" And he says, "Let me model this behavior for your children," and cuts his neck and his belly open. Our
Yeah, but he's
paragon
like
of virtue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
To Jacob's point, the
But yeah,
troll
like-
scene, negotiating being eaten and everybody's kind of having a jolly laugh about it. That's so kiddie.
Yeah, that's
It's kiddie, but it's there's a difference between kiddie and cringy. It's cringy.
Yeah.
It's just bad. It's just poorly done. It's supposed to be for nerds, guy. Like, not to be that
To
guy.
me,
Yeah, it's supposed to be
Nerds
for
and
people.
stoners, baby.
I think it's supposed to
I
be
love the Lord of the
for
Rings.
it's supposed to be for children, and then the parents or the adults that bring the children have some things for them too. But I still
I
say
will
it's
die on this
mostly
hill. There is not a child in America who was remotely interested in seeing this movie, less so after it starts.
I think Joe's right.
Yes,
Are you
I'm
sure?
like,
I'm on board with
there's
Joe.
absolutely
I mean,
no
all the
fucking
goofy
way.
dwarves and stuff. I don't know, man.
They don't.
What do we do for Thanksgiving?
Again,
Oh, we
like,
saw The Hobbit?
You're watching The Labyrinth. Shut up. We're not watching The Hobbit,
Yeah,
right?
really.
Fuck out of here.
Hey, 10-year-old, right before you were born, your mother and I were really into this thing called The Lord of the Rings, and we watched those. And obviously, you grew up like the kids wouldn't have any context for it unless they had read unless they had a parent who had them read that book. Like,
But
there's
most
just no way.
kids don't care about like the plot of movies and stuff. They just want to see some like shiny stuff on
Those
screen,
good.
and
It's just not all that shiny, and it's 2 hours and 49 minutes. It's
saying
like, no fucking way
saying they
kids
made a
see this
movie because saying they made this movie because they think their audience is too stupid to care if it was good. That's not an endorsement, Jacob.
no.
Yeah.
I guess I agree with most of what you guys are saying, but I still can't totally hate this movie. So I'm kind of in that camp, I guess.
Before we go to final
that's
thoughts,
fine.
what do you like about it? Let's start with Jacob. Like anything
Yeah.
that's positive, right? Let's not drag it all the
I
way
think
through the mud.
Yeah, the elements that were adapted from the book are sometimes good, and like I said, I think they made an effort to try to make the dwarves distinct from each other as much as possible, at least some of them, right?
Mhm.
And I think Bilbo is great. I think Martin Freeman is like a great casting for a younger Ian Holm, right? Looks a lot like him, and it's like a Star Wars. It's like Solo, but I like seeing all the cameos and shit. Like what the meeting of Elrond and Galadriel and Saruman is like. Oh shit, that's all the fucking power players from the last movie, right? So that's fun to me. But I can agree it's not a good movie, but it was entertaining. It held my attention enough that I watched it.
Okay, Joe. Any positives you could say?
Yeah, no, like, look, I know I said a bunch of negative shit about this because I do think it's a bad movie. It's a cash grab. It should have been something else. But all of that said, I thought some of the action was really fun to watch. I did enjoy that. Some of the stuff that we're saying is kiddie or cringy does work for me. It just goes on too long, but I do like some of it. It has a D&D feel to it. And now that I know what I signed up for, I am excited to see these last two movies because
Wow.
at least I know what I'm getting into. And that might be a tonally confused piece, but at least I know that's what to expect. And I can be along for the ride, which this was intended to be all along.
Gotcha. Nice,
I'm not
nice.
super. I'm not super excited for the next one. I'm not a huge Benedict Cumberdragon fan.
There's not a word in the sentence like, "Oh, Benedict Cumberbatch plays a talking dragon." I hate every word in that sentence.
I will
And
talk
its
about
face
it.
is like modeled off of his face too, which
We'll
is
get there. Yeah. This
We'll
is
get
not that movie. But he did get credited as the necromancer. I don't think there's a line. I think he just breathes, and they gave Benedict Cumberbatch
In
the
this
credit for
one?
this. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even realize that.
Doing
That's
some
hilarious.
Mordor speech whisperily. Yeah.
Mike, favorite parts?
I like Bilbo. I like his kind of heart. He doesn't want to go on the adventure, reluctant hero, and him and Thorin. It's a little on the head with Thorin. You're a piece of shit. It's like okay, yeah, but I like Bilbo and that speech specifically when he's like, it's about I didn't want to leave my home because it's comfortable, and you guys don't even have one, and that sucks. So I'm gonna help you get yours back. I love it. I love that moment, and that's the good that's wrapped up in all that extra bullshit. How about you? Say something nice, and then we'll get the last thoughts.
Yeah, I'm still reviewing these on Letterboxd, obviously. Yeah, the last three, I think, all got 5 stars. This was a 3-er. That's not bad. That's still a pretty good movie. It's a Peter Jackson movie. The framing inside Bilbo's apartment when they're eating all the food and the pantry's empty. The camera starts in the back. It's in this weird little shot, pushes back further to show how empty everything is. Come on. Only Peter Jackson would come up with that stuff. And he's hiring New Zealand actors. A couple of the dwarves are from fucking Meet the Freebles and have been part of his cabal or cadre of actors for that long. That's fucking awesome.
Yeah,
that is really cool. Nice, yeah. Well, that's it. That's the nice stuff about the Lord of the Rings and Unexpected Journey. So let's go ahead and jump over to final thoughts. We'll see. There's no telling where your feet will take you. It's a dangerous business walking out your front door.
That's right. Sorry, I had to leave for a minute there. Someone was ringing my doorbell earlier.
We don't want any welcomers, well-wishers, and certainly no distant
Right,
relations.
Maybe a wizard or something.
Yeah, you need to go on an adventure, Jacob. You hanging out too much.
Yeah.
We're back. We're wrapping things up here, giving our final thoughts on this special months-long celebration of all things Lord of the Rings and our first installment of The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. And we're going to give those final thoughts, but the podcast isn't going to end, listeners, until you can answer this riddle. What is in my pocket?
What is in my podcast?
Do I want to know?
What is in my podcast?
What is it? Do you have something?
Leave us riddle reviews. That will be the new game, you bastards.
I did
Is
like
a ring in your pocket, or are you just happy to see me?
Nice. I do like Gollum's answer when he's like, "What's in my pocket? Handses? Are your hands in your pocket?"
It's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
That could count.
It's like,
Well, Gollum was coming up with some pretty good riddles, actually. Like you wouldn't expect.
Did you guys know the answers to any of them live? Did you figure them out?
No.
No, I'm not as smart as.
I've
Bilbo,
seen them
I guess.
so many times from the cartoon that I knew them, but the horses on a red hill, the teeth one, that was not in the animated. So.
That one, Mike, I hear so much, and then that old riddle that people used to tell in fiction of like, this guy tells the truth, the other guy lies.
From the
Just
labyrinth.
Kill me if I'm ever in that situation, Mike. Fucking blow my
I think
brains
I
out.
understand
I
it,
can hear less.
but I can't explain it. Yeah, that's in the labyrinth.
impossible.
Right. One of us tells the truth, and one of us always lies.
Bang, bang, you're both dead. Get out of the way.
Yeah, I'm out
What'd
of
you
here.
learn?
Don't fuck with me. So, The Hobbit, final thoughts. I guess, can I just jump in on my final thoughts?
Please.
Because I was really big
Yeah,
on Lord
go
of the
for
Rings. I was saying, and I'm going to kind of retread this quickly, it's just a Redux of Fellowship. Slow open in the Shire. I don't want to go on an adventure, but I guess I will. Interlude in Rivendell. They end up in a underground city, Moria, right? But Goblin King Town is just worse Moria, right? And then that's the final battle. And then you have another final battle where Azog and that Uruk-hai show up. And then you're just
Party
like, well,
splits.
where do we go next? Yeah, and it's the remake of Fellowship. It's just the worst version of it. And we'll have to see all three of them, but right now it feels like, even if it is acting as a prequel to The Lord of the Rings, it's so unnecessary because you pop in Lord of the Rings and you get Cate Blanchett doing that voiceover, you're good to go. I don't need these extra scenes with Dol Guldur. Just show me Bilbo's journey. That's what I want, but we got 2 more of these things, so we'll see what happens. But, yep, that's my final thoughts.
Nice. For me,
I'll go for it.
Yeah. Jacob.
I was gonna go positive, negative, positive, negative.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, let's do
Yeah, if
that.
you want to go negative, then I'll go positive.
Yeah. You said it's like a remake of Fellowship. It's New Coke. It's not a movie. It's a product.
Love that.
Damn.
It should have been 45 minutes of footage that people online scramble to watch because it's all of the added screens and waiting queues from an attraction at Universal. That's what it should have been. It should have been a
I wish I wasn't
45-minute
watching the one
special.
where a dad's swearing in the background in line, Joe.
But for real,
Hey!
it should have been a 45-minute long special. It was a little ahead of its time, I think. I think this would have been prime streamer exclusive limited event in a different world, But what we ended up getting is okay, I guess. I don't know. It's goofy as fuck. At least I know what I've signed up for, and I'm ready to go on the journey with the last two.
Unexpectedly. Nice. Jacob.
Yeah.
Unexpectedly.
Truly.
Joe, I can see where you're coming from, but I can't get behind The Hobbit should have been adapted to be a video that you watch before getting on a theme park ride. I think that probably would piss off a lot of Tolkien fans. But I do think, make it 1 2-hour movie. Yeah. Instead of 3 movies. I can get behind that. Cut out, cut Azog the Defiler, cut everything with him. Totally pointless. You could definitely streamline and make a decent Hobbit movie, I think, with some elements of like prequel Lord of the Rings stuff, but not too over the top. So I guess I'm the most positive about this because I think there are good things about it, and I was entertained the whole time watching it, but it's definitely not a good movie. I say, like, I would agree with you, Colin. I think it's a 3 stars out of 5 stars type of thing. I'm not super excited about the next one. I'm interested because I haven't seen them before, and I want to see what all is going to happen. But I think this one might be my favorite. Well, I haven't seen the other 2, but
Right now,
I
it's
don't
your
see-
favorite.
yeah.
But you're assuming it's only going to go downhill from
Next
here.
one's going to be rough for
Essentially,
Joe
yes.
because it's the most dragon heavy of the 3.
Yeah,
So we'll have to
dragon.
see.
And it's a talking dragon with Benedict Cumberbatch's voice, which is already like the most annoying thing in the world to me.
Paka.
Well, let me
Um,
just say, Peter Jackson, I'm sorry they did this to you. I'm going to look the camera on YouTube. Peter Jackson, I'm sorry they made you do this. And I see you trying. And thanks for
Not
getting at
cool,
least
no.
some good stuff in there. Okay. Thanks.
And I watched your Beatles documentary. I thought it was great.
There we go.
Hey. Well, on that note, and giving my final thoughts, Jacob, I went back. I watched King Kong before this one because I thought it might be
Oh.
important to see where his work's at before going to this. Too long, dude. Jacob, you're so wrong. Too long. This film,
No
too
way.
long. Lovely Bones, too long.
I've never seen The Lovely Bones, but I'm assuming it's not long enough.
You know what movie is not too long? The Frighteners.
Yes.
The best Peter
As Joe's
Jackson
pointed out,
film.
it's screaming. Go watch it. Now, I've got the solution for all of us, guys, and I've got to go back to the Star Wars metaphor one more time. Let's not do Phantom of Menace. Let's not do Solo. Let's make this that animated Clone Wars movie. Let's just do an animated 2-hour Hobbit that's like great voice cast. Peter Jackson directs an animated movie, which he's never done before. It's halfway there. Most of the movie's CGI is ridiculous.
It's like The
Yeah.
Princess Bride. Ian Holmes starts writing, and then you're in
Yes.
cartoon
yes,
world, right?
Yes.
And you bookend it.
Yes.
And it would have
love
been
that.
just a couple years after Beowulf. The technology would have been a little better.
So here's what I'll
Yeah, I
do.
think
I'll
that could
take
work.
the beginning with Ian Holm and the end with Ian Holm from the 3rd movie, and I'll put the Rankin Bass cartoon in the middle, and then everyone will be happy.
What an abomination.
Well, I think they should model. If they did that, they should have modeled Bilbo exactly like the Rankin Bass Bilbo.
Yes. Agreed.
Yeah, but Colin, any other final thoughts? That's brilliant, by the way.
No, I was happy to watch this again. I remember, again, putting up the fight to watch this because you're at that cynical age. I think, what was this? I was like 20-ish at the point, 22
To
maybe,
2012, so yeah.
And it just, again, the cultural response of Lord of the Rings was, my mom knew what it was. People were shopping for each other. Everyone had seen it, listening to the Enya CD. the one time I felt like I was home was when The Ring came out and that Ring classic score started, and I thought, okay, this is that movie that I remember liking a ton. Not this movie.
Yeah. One more note for me too before we get out of here. Speaking of the score and the music, there's because they're rushed, a lot of recycled music. Like at one point, the Ring Wraith theme plays, and that is like in a Tolkien language. It's specifically talking about the kings and the Ring Wraiths, and it's like it doesn't make any sense contextually for that point in the movie. It's just we had no time. Fuck Warner Brothers, dude. Why?
It's like Mike, it's like the one series you can't cut corners with, isn't it?
Yeah.
This whole franchise, and it's truly like just how you presented this one getting made. It's just
why are we using Strider's theme? Yeah.
It was doomed from the start with all the studio interference, and if they just would have gone with Guillermo del Toro, let him put his own vision on it with Peter Jackson producing, I think it would have turned out better.
Hobbit. I'm making spooky
Like
Hobbit.
Pan's Labyrinth.
Azog hates Bilbo at the end. They kiss.
Hideo Kojima could have had a cameo. Yeah, they're all friends. Joe's right. It's a cash grab. And it's fitting that it was Doom from the start because we are currently on our journey to not Mount Doom, but the Lonely Mountain of Erebor. But it all ties together because the ring that Bilbo has came from Mount Doom. So did this movie trilogy. 2 more to go, fellas. Unexpected Unexpected December.
Desolation.
Yes.
The Desolation Blues.
The desolation of your hosts. Desolation Cowboy Bebop
Truly.
episode. But yeah, thanks for listening, everybody. Let us know what you thought of The Hobbit,
Yeah, like we said, rate, review, subscribe. Leave us some riddles. I think that's a funny thing to do. Leave us some easy-to-solve riddles, and maybe we'll get back to you on air and read and solve some of them or something.
Pockets are off limits.
Yes. Don't you dare.
Pocket.
No.
Check out our YouTube. Subscribe there. Helps us out, too.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I guess running out hosts.
Yeah, we've been your hosts. This is Colin the Defiler, I guess.
Man.
I hate it.
I'll be Mike and Shield.
Bill Joe Baggins.
This is Jacko. I'm one of the 75 dwarves.
It's Jacko and Slacko and Flacco.
I know what Sneezy does. I definitely know what Jacko does.
You know what Smokey does? Yeah, all right, Normies. Have a good one.
Bye.
Go hit the old Toby. Catch you next time.